Hi everyone, welcome back to Rosemaling with Art of Lise. If you're new to my channel, this is a channel dedicated to the wonderful folk art from Norway called Rosemaling. It's a decorative art form done on wood, though I have paper here, that's been around since the 1600s. If you are returning, I want to say thank you for coming back and seeing me again. And I welcome you to a continuation of what I started about 2 weeks ago. I was working on C strokes and S strokes. These are the founding strokes of Rosemaling. And today what I'm going to do is actually combine my strokes together here. I'm going to move my C's and S's together and make some flower forms. So right now I have my camera set so that you can be right on top of what I'm doing, and I'm just going to quickly review my C strokes and S strokes. I'm using a Loew-Cornell 797 flat brush here, very simple, and I am using JoSonja acrylic paints, and I am continuing with the color Citrine. Just kind of fun to work with here. I have my medium all set, and medium is a combination that I made and put in my little container here, and that is a combination of JoSonja Flow Medium, JoSonja, let's see, where's my retarder? I'm searching for it. Well, JoSonja Clear Glaze Medium, and JoSonja Retarder. It's a 1-to-1-to-1 combination. I like to use that. You can use water. You can use also something called JoSonja Magic Mix. All right, so let's get my brush ready. It's nice and dry here. I'm just going to tip into my medium. I'm going to tap it out onto my paper towel that I have handy. And I'm going to side load my brush here. So in Telemark, which is one of the styles of Rosemaling, we use the one brush here and we side load so we get dark to light. So I'm going to just swish back and forth into my paint, come back out again, go back in. I might add a little bit more medium. Now, I'm adding a little extra medium to my brush and stuff because I'm working on dry paper. Most of the time with Rosemaling and other decorative art forms, we're really working on a painted surface. It's much smoother and much easier flow for your paint. Not so much here on paper. All right, so I'm using my arm as a brace. I'm holding my brush about, a third of the way up in between my fingers, very similar to the way you hold a brush, not a brush, a pencil or a pen. And I'm going to just lay some C strokes down. This is a review, and by all means, please go back to the first video, my #1 of this series, and take a look at these C strokes. So I'm going to push my brush down. Let's see, is that a good angle? Let's move it just a little bit this way. Let's see, so we get a little bit of an angle with that there. Here we go. So I'm going to take my bristles, I'm going to push those bristles down. I'm about the 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock position here. I'm pulling up to the 12 o'clock position. As I pull around to the 3 o'clock position, I'm getting thinner, 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 and then I am pulling out. So my brush, let me add more paint to this, literally is I push those bristles down and I'm pulling them towards my right, and I'm pulling them around. And now I'm going to stop here for a second because, just to show you guys, let me get a pen. Thought I had a pen handy, but of course I cleaned up my table here and I put my pen aside. So my bristles are basically facing this way. Sometimes they'll face towards me. And as I pull around, my bristles are now going to face towards my left. I got my finger in my paint here, that's okay. And I keep pulling, and now my bristles are facing this way. But as I get here, and I'm pulling around, I'm taking the pressure off my bristles. I'm really not changing direction of them. But because I'm pulling up, they're thinning out and joining each other and getting to that chiseled edge. So again, this is a review. I'm going to come back the other direction. I'm going from my right to left, pushing those bristles down, pulling them around. Let me push this up a little bit so you really can see this. Push those bristles down, pull them around, take the pressure off the bristles. As you take the pressure off, they thin out and come to a chiseled edge. The other stroke, and you can do this two ways. You can go from thick to thin, or you can pull these strokes thin to thick. So here I'm starting on the chiseled edge. That's going this way here. And as I pull my brush towards my left and heading towards the 9 o'clock position, I start pushing those bristles down. I'm going to pull them down and around, and when I get down here, I'm turning the brush in my fingers, just turning the brush in my fingers and bringing them to a rounded end. Let's do that in the opposite direction. Same idea. Starting from that chiseled edge, push those bristles down, pull them around, and pull them up and around. Oh, I lost a little color there, but that's okay. It's all about learning how to use your brush and make it work for you. A lot of times you're going to have smaller strokes inside of it, and you'll put these C strokes together. Your C stroke is really your main stroke. In some decorative forms, they call them the comma stroke. And sometimes they call them the comma stroke because here I made really nice big C's. Sometimes your C is literally just going to be a short little curve like this. But it's the same process of pushing your bristles down, pushing your bristles down, and pulling them around. Fun to practice. All right, that's the one stroke with the C stroke. Let's quickly look back at the S stroke. All right, so I just write this down here. So the S stroke is your other stroke that we're going to use, and it's the second stroke of the two main strokes of Rosemaling. And the S stroke, again, if you look back at the video from the other day, I start with a Z, thin, thick, thin, thin, thick, thin. And again, I'm using the pressure on my brush. And now I'm just going to start rounding the edges. Thin, thick, thin, thin, thick, thin, thin, thick, thin. And I should say, when I load my brush, I'm really loading up almost to the metal, to the ferrule there of it. So don't be afraid to add plenty of paint. Please do in the opposite direction. A Z, and then start rounding your edges. Now, if you're sitting in front of the TV or you're just bored, you don't have a TV, we don't watch TV anymore, but we just read and do different stuff. I'll sit and paint. I have plenty to do, soccer and all that other stuff. Anyway, just take some time. Take a notepad and some paper and stuff and just practice. Remember, this is just paint. This is fun. We're not doing rocket science here. You see I'm adding these together. This is, you know, we're humans. We're not robots. We are meant to be creative. We don't have to be perfect with this. This is about bringing inner joy to yourself and just letting things flow. So I'm just letting my brush work for me. I'm kind of warming up. And if you're a Rosemaler or you're in other art forms, this is a great way to kind of warm your brush up, warm your hand up. All right, so now what I'm going to do is get into the meat and potatoes of this. Let's play with putting our C strokes and S strokes together. Let's make some flowers maybe. All right, I'm just going to let it flow and see what comes out. All right, I'm going to make a flower here, and I think I'm going to pull some C strokes towards me. So let's pull a C stroke here. Notice I slow my brush down and I pick it up. If I go too fast, I get something I like to call a flippy. So a flippy is if I do this, and then it kind of fades out here. It doesn't have this more rounded edge. And you can go back over these again and restroke them. Again, I'm working in acrylics. Rosemaling traditionally is a wet on wet oil art form. And I do paint with oils, and I started with oils and painted primarily with them to start with. But when I started having my kids, I was able to take a class from a wonderful Rosemaler named Karen Jensen who switched over to acrylics. Let's throw some S-strokes in here. We're just going to build on these. And the timing was perfect because it was right before I had my first daughter. I'll just kind of grow some flowers here. And if you notice, I'm turning my page so I'm pulling my strokes towards me. So the nice thing with the acrylics, and acrylics dry darker, especially when you're working on wood and stuff, they'll dry darker than you first put them down. So you will have to overstroke a second coat at least, maybe 2 or 3, depends on your own personal flavor or taste with it, to get the color you want. Now if you notice, most of my strokes are going to be C strokes. The S strokes are just a nice add. It's like your leaf forms there. And I can just keep coming around here and finish off a whole flower. I can put another leaf there. Maybe we'll put a sepal. And then this would be something I would detail. I'll save that for the last video to put together. So a lot of times you'll have a central C stroke. So let me put a central C here. And it's just, like I said, I'm just simply doodling. I'm going to pull a nice big C here. Relatively big. Let me put a sister stroke C in right next to it. And again, I could pull this from thin to thick, but I like doing thick to thin, and I overlap down at the bottom so they all come to the same point. Now I'm going to throw an S stroke in here, but an S stroke that doesn't have this point to it like this one does. And I'm going to start up here. I'm going to round that S stroke. And I'm just going to start pulling it around. It got a little further out than I wanted. That's all right. You know what? It's just paint. It's not a big deal. Let's add another little bump there to let it grow. And again, I'm pulling it down to the sepal there because I want it all to come down to this point. When you look at flowers in nature, it's all going back to the root, or it's all going back to the sepal with that. I'll pull this towards me. Let's put a nice S stroke out here. Let's add a bump to it, maybe one more bump. Let's add some more down here. So as you can see, I'm really just playing with my brush. I don't have anything set in my mind right now. And you know, a lot of times when you take classes, you'll have a pattern. And with those patterns, you'll still have these brush strokes. But if you can take some time to just practice freehand and learn the muscle, or learn the strokes, and then play with them, you work on your muscle memory. And it just makes working in different classes much easier if you see a pattern or something you want to try. So again, I'm using a flat brush, I'm using acrylic paint, I'm using a medium, and you could use water, and I'm just using my notepad, and I'm just having fun. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. I hope you had fun watching this little video, and I will put together one more video where I work on some detailing. It's just nice to refresh, and then I'll get back to some more projects. Hey, remember, it's just paint. I hope you had fun. I hope you give it a try, and I hope God's blessings are with you today and every day. Take care, everybody.